last presidential debate between candidates Pedro Castillo and Keiko Fujimori concludes ahead of June 6 presidential elections in Peru. China urges the United States to stop politicizing the origin tracing of Covid-19. Israel's Prime Minister meets Egyptian intelligence chief in hopes of brokering a permanent ceasefire with Palestine. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. The second round of presidential elections in Peru is nearing. The contenders in the runoff, Pedro Castillo and Keiko Fujimori, the daughter of former right-wing dictator Alberto Fujimori, face each other in the last television debate before the vote, this coming Sunday. The debate took place at the San Agustin National University in the southern city of Arequipa. Opinion polls are giving a slight advantage to Castillo, a leftist teacher running on an anti-neoliberal platform, supported by the Free Peru Party and an array of left-wing parties and social movements. Fujimori, in turn, is the candidate of Peru's big businesses and financial institutions. Like its neighboring countries, Peru saw in November last year a national wave of protests demanding a constitutional assembly. Peru's current constitution was imposed by Fujimori's father in 1993. Pedro Castillo, on tackling the health and pandemic management issues, stated that he will promote national scientific work with the aim of developing technologies to fight COVID-19.
Necessary to and research so that the people committed to this, the great professionals and our fellow Peruvian compatriots, experts who have studied outside this country, return with the technology, the experience necessary to develop our own technology. We cannot beg for constitutional rights.
Keiko Fujimori, the candidate of the right-wing People's Power Party, promised in turn vaccination for all within 2021.
It's been announced the acquisition of 60 million doses of vaccines. This is good news. It would now be important to know the arrival schedule of these vaccines, and of course we are committed to make the vaccination process this year quickly, so that all Peruvians are vaccinated, and to achieve this goal, we have called Mr. Carlos Neujas, who showed great management skills in the Pan American Games. We will make the vaccination near your home, in every pharmacy, in churches, schools, so that all Peruvians are vaccinated this year.
The Venezuelan president, Nicolás Maduro Moros, announced the arrival of a batch of 500,000 Sputnik V vaccines from Russia, which will be added to the advanced phase of mass vaccination against the pandemic scheduled for early June. The Venezuelan president assured that the whole population will be immunized against the pandemic, despite the threats from the United States to laboratories willing to send vaccines to the Bolivarian country.
The shortage of vaccines, the inequality, and the persecution against Venezuela, if you add the shortage of vaccines in the world, and the inequality in distribution, add the persecution against Venezuela, the Bolivarian Venezuela, the persecution of the American imperialism that threatens companies if they sell vaccines to Venezuela. They threaten them with sanctions. Only Venezuela is subjected to this in the world. But nothing stops us. Nobody stops us, and we are searching with a lot of intelligence, creativity, perseverance, and a lot of work. We are looking for the way so that this phase of vaccination is fulfilled.
And President Maduro also spoke of Colombia. The Venezuelan president expressed his solidarity with the victims of repression at the hands of the security forces in the midst of the national strike.
Hundreds of murders in the past few weeks. On Friday in the city of Cali, in Cali alone, the repressive forces of Ivan Duque killed 13 young people, killed with bullets. More than 200 have disappeared, according to human rights organizations. Right there in Valle del Cauca, on Wednesday, Thursday, young people who were detained by the police appeared on the banks of a river, shot and tortured, a massacre, and the world does not react.
President Maduro denounced the silence of the international community. He appealed directly to the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet and the Secretary General Antonio Guterres to go beyond formal statements of concern.
As the government of Ivan Duque has declared war on the humble people, on the Colombian youth, Venezuela is raising its voice before the concert of nations to denounce this massacre against the people of Colombia. What is High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet going to do? Is she going to be satisfied with just issuing a statement saying she is concerned? What about the massacre, Bachelet? The massacre in Colombia. What is going on? UN Secretary General, what are you going to do about the massacre, the brutal massacre? They have launched the army against the people of Colombia to massacre them with their guns.
The national strike continues in Colombia. At least 3 people were injured after an attack by security forces in Buga, in the central south province of Cauca Valley. The events took place around 11 a.m. in the Santa Marina neighborhood when security forces opened fire on the demonstrators. In this context, the community denounced the use of live ammunition by the security forces against unarmed civilians. Local groups called for an end to state violence against peaceful demonstrators. In Colombia, an international solidarity mission presented a new report on the violation of human rights in the context of the popular revolt. The Argentinian delegation updated its reports on the crimes against humanity in the country, recorded by envoys present in the cities of Bogotá, Pereira, Medellín, Cali, and Popayán. The organization also criticized the mainstream media for ignoring the plight of victims. Fresh protests erupted also in Bogotá, Colombia's capital city. On Sunday, the mobile anti-riot squads cracked again on protesters in Bogotá. According to witnesses, at least 11 people were injured and 4 were detained by police forces. The national strike entered Monday its 32nd day. The protest was ignited by a non-withdrawal government tax reform bill and grew into a national movement for constitutional change. At least 43 people have been killed so far by either the police or unidentified armed gangs, according to Temblores, a leading Colombian human rights organization. Hundreds have been wounded and over 1,000 arbitrarily detained. There in Bogotá, a police officer was caught trying to commit sexual abuse on a young woman he had detained. Some groups tried to attack him, but the neighbors on the same community who were assaulted every night saved the officer's life. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. China said on Monday the United States' politicization of origin tracing has seriously interfered and undermined international cooperations on the origin tracing research, creating difficulties and obstacles for the international community to fight the epidemic and to save lives.
China has always been open, transparent, and cooperative, and has invited WHO experts to China twice to carry out cooperation on origin tracing. The traceability work involves many countries and places around the world. We call other countries, like China, to invite WHO experts to carry out origin tracing research and earnestly respond to the concerns of the international community. We urge the United States and a few other countries to immediately stop politicizing their efforts and deliberately undermining international cooperation in origin tracing research for ulterior political purposes.
West African leaders have met in Ghana to discuss the instability in Mali. The meeting comes in response to Mali's second coup in 9 months. The presidents of Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Burkina Faso were among those who attended the summit. Mali's coup leader and newly appointed head of transitional government, Colonel Assimi Goïta, also attended the meeting. The West African country has been under a transitional government for 18 months, following a coup d'etat on August 2020. But soldiers earlier this week forced both the transitional president and prime minister to resign, and Goïta took over.
remain resolute in supporting the people of Ghana, of Mali, to find a peaceful solution and restore democracy and stability in the country. In this respect, we must critically examine the dynamics of the current situation and make informed decisions. I'm thus using this opportunity to reiterate, on behalf of ECOWAS, our continued commitment to the peaceful transition in Mali with a basic goal of restoring democratic government and working for the stability of Mali and of our region.
On Monday, South Africa will return to a stricter lockdown to curb a sharp rise in COVID-19 cases. President Cyril Ramaphosa said that the country has recorded a 31% rise in COVID-19 cases in the past 7 days. Ramaphosa said that from Monday, the nighttime curfew will be extended by an hour to start at 11 p.m. until 4 a.m. A maximum of 100 people will be allowed at indoor social gatherings and no more than 250 at an outdoors gathering. South Africa was one of the most affected countries by the COVID-19 in Africa early in the pandemic, recording 1.6 million confirmed cases and more than 56,000 deaths.
Increase in daily cases is following the same trajectory or direction as it did at the start of the previous two waves. We've seen in other countries the tragic consequences of allowing the virus to spread unchecked. The Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID-19 has therefore recommended that the country urgently implement further restrictions to limit the increase in infections.
Residents from DR Congo's Goma district have started to return to their homes following last week's volcano eruption. Many of the returning residents found their houses destroyed or heavily damaged. At least 32 people have died as a result of the eruption, including 3 children, while 40 people have been reported as missing. About 14,000 people fled Goma to nearby Rwanda after the eruption.
I've just arrived at my home in the Bujuvu district. Unfortunately, when I arrived, I saw fissures everywhere that were caused by the tremors. Everywhere in the house, the cement has been destroyed. Look how it got destroyed. It's because of the volcano. And even on the other side, look.
And DR Congo President Felix Tshisekedi has said that the situation is under control following Mount Nyiragongo's eruption.
Then there's the problem of the return of these displaced people. And for me, this is the most delicate issue because the day they return, some will find themselves without a home, some will be without food, some will be sick, so that too needs to be anticipated. I want to go and see for myself how our compatriots are being looked after, but also to give them comfort and support and to tell them that the war of Congo is with them. I begin by expressing my compassion and solidarity with the people of Goma. These compatriots from the East have constantly been victims of many abuses, sometimes by armed groups and now even by nature herself.
Ethiopia has staged a massive rally in Addis Ababa to rail against the United States imposing sanctions over the conflict in the Tigray region. Demonstrators packed a stadium in the capital for the pro-government rally, chanting against U.S. sanctions and waving posters accusing foreign powers of interfering in Ethiopia's sovereignty. The rally comes after the U.S. President Joe Biden condemned the war in Tigray, and his administration imposed restrictions on visas and assistance over the 6-month conflict. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government denounced the U.S. sanctions as a resolve to meddle in our internal affairs. The Tigray conflict erupted in November when Prime Minister Ahmed, the winner of the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize, sent troops to confront the leaders of the Tigray's ruling party, accusing them of attacks on federal army camps.
America and its associates, without understanding the ways of the TPLF forces and its disastrous acts, they are interfering in our domestic affairs by imposing travel sanctions and prerequisites which can by no means be accepted. They should stop and think thoughtfully about this issue to correct it.
I came here today to oppose the idea of foreign countries trying to interfere in our domestic affairs and babysit us. We are a sovereign country. As a sovereign country, our people and our government decide for our country.
We have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Egypt and Israel are holding negotiations on Palestine in Cairo. They are part of efforts by Egypt to broker a permanent ceasefire agreement. The trip is the first formal visit of a foreign minister of the occupation power in 13 years. The participants claim to be fostering a ceasefire between Israel and Palestinian resistance, which managed this month to repel aggression and strike all of Israel's major cities. Gaza suffered over 250 fatalities, 61 of them children, and 1,900 wounded in the sustained Israel air and missile attacks. Egypt played a vital role in negotiating the ceasefire, which Palestinians celebrated as a victory against the occupation. Meanwhile, in the occupied city of Jerusalem, the Israeli Prime Minister met with the head of Egyptian intelligence, who also held talks with leaders of the resistance organization Hamas in Gaza. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi designated his intelligence chief and his delegation to hold a series of meetings with occupation authorities and the Hamas resistance to ensure a permanent ceasefire is reached. Egypt has also pledged $500 million to help in the reconstruction of Palestine's densely populated areas, including Gaza City, which were destroyed by the Israeli airstrikes. Meanwhile, in Palestine, residents whose houses were destroyed by Israeli missiles have called for urgent help to return to normal life. Despite help pledged by the United Nations and other countries, most Palestinians still remain homeless and lack basic necessities. Israel's bombardment of the Gaza Strip has killed at least 213 Palestinians, including 61 children and 36 women. According to the UN, at least 58,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been internally displaced, with many of them cramped in makeshift shelters.
One day we had a house, and the next day we had nothing. Our house was shelled by the occupation. 2 reconnaissance strikes hit the house without warning, and we escaped immediately. We went to a school, then we came back home, but there was nothing left in the house. I don't have shelter anymore. I'm homeless. At the moment, I'm living on the street, and the children are living in the school. We don't have shelter anymore.
At the moment, I don't want anything from this world except to live a normal life with my family, to have inner peace, security, and to live according to human rights, safe and sound. God willing, this will be the case.
Our house was hit by the Zionist occupation's warplanes. It is completely destroyed. Now we have come here. We fled to the school for shelter, and now we are living here waiting for help or compensation for the rent we pay.
Cyprus voters have headed to the polls for parliamentary elections amid a corruption scandal. Nearly 660 candidates are running for 56 seats in parliament. The election is limited to government-held areas, excluding the northern third of the island, where a breakaway Turkish Cypriot state holds sway. Ultra-nationalists looking to exploit the anti-establishment mood have also played on concerns over migration, another issue for the European Union's member state. The present administration has faced criticism for a lucrative cash for passport scheme it had to abandon amid allegations of corruption in November 2020.
people experience much corruption during the last 10-15 years in Cyprus. And it's good to see that every time we see new people and younger people in the parliament, rather than seeing that same people are voted and elected every time. All people experience
State of emergency in the province of Canterbury as the region was pounded by heavy rain. The extreme weather have forced thousands of people to abandon their homes. Meanwhile, Acting Emergency Management Minister Chris Fafoe said about 3,000 homes were at risk, and the army had been mobilized to assist with evacuations if necessary. The New Zealand Meteorological Service had issued a red warning for the area, with up to 300 millimeters of rain expected to fall in inland areas. In coastal Christchurch, the main city in Canterbury, forecasters expected about 100 millimeters to fall, well above the monthly total average for May. And a ferry in eastern Indonesia has caught fire with nearly 200 people on board. The incident forced passengers and crew to jump into the sea, but casualties nowhere reported. The fire broke out in 15 minutes after the vessel departed Ternate, the provincial capital of North Maluku, at around 7 a.m. local time. The Sea Transportation Authority said all 181 passengers, including 22 children, and 14 crew members were rescued and safely evacuated to a nearby island. Authorities are still investigating the cause of the incident.
81 passengers are recorded in the manifest and 14 crew on board. Until now, the Joint Search and Rescue Team is still listing the passengers who have been rescued.
Japan is facing growing calls to cancel the Tokyo Summer Olympics, scheduled to open on July 23rd, with concerns over the COVID-19 pandemic. An online petition calling for the cancellation of the Tokyo Olympics has received over 400,000 signatures in a few weeks. Governors want to contain the spread of the new variants and ease the medical crisis in the cities. But there is criticism that Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga is making the Olympics his priority. Amid pressure from district governments, Suga on Friday announced a 3-week extension of the COVID-19 state of emergency in Tokyo, Osaka, and 7 other prefectures to end on June 20th. Restrictions such as prohibiting restaurants from serving alcohol or offering karaoke services and requiring them to stop operation by 8 p.m. will stay in effect beyond May 31st. Sri Lanka has banned fishing along an 80-kilometer coastal area as the country battles to clear plastic waste coming from a burning ship. The country's fisheries minister said that the government will compensate the thousands of fishermen affected, while adding that seafood currently in the market was safe for consumption. Authorities have also deployed thousands of security personnel in hazmat to clean the beaches of plastic waste and other debris from the Singapore-registered cargo ship burning since May 20th. The fire broke out as the ship waited to enter the Colombo port. Authorities believe the fire was caused by a nitric acid leak.
On this one, the chemical is on our immediate vicinity, where it increases the chemical content as well as the alkalinity, acidity, and also the temperature of the water. It has its consequences and impacts on the altering biodiversity and disappearing of some the phytoplankton. The plastic pollutant, though it can travel a long distance, but there's no toxicity immediately from the plastic pellets. But once the fish swallow it, it does. Sometimes it would not be able to excrete it, and so that the food system clog.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.